So it's a block once you craft it and while you're using it. In the 10 minutes it might take me to take any concept and instill it in your head so you can't get out of your head. The minute you take it in your head, it becomes an icon. So a block is just an icon waiting to happen.
Hey everyone, this is David Paul, and in this video I'm bringing you a conversation with Jamie Mustard, author of the new book, The Iconist. Jamie and I are going to teach you how to engage with your audience and stand out through what he calls blocks and icons. If you like interviews like this with authors and thought leaders, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and also be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when I post new videos. Also, be sure to stick around to the end of this video because Jamie and I are going to be giving away a free autographed copy of his book. Let's get into it. Jamie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So this is a super interesting concept. For people who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, take us through your big idea of what you call blocks and icons.
Okay, so the big idea is this. We live in a world where we're so overloaded with content that it's made it harder and harder to get attention, for people to have a voice. In one of the reviews of my book, Bill Taylor, the co-founder of Fast Company, said, scarcity of attention is the defining business challenge of our time. And I don't think it's just the defining business challenge of our time, it's the defining business and social challenge of our time. I have a concept in the book called blocks and icons. And what blocks are is a codification of primal laws that explain to why we lock on to something, why we pay attention to something. In other words, I explain in the book the same reason we would stop and look at a painting, listen to a song, listen to a speech. The reason that we discard one thing and then lock on to another thing is based off of a very simple set of unchanging primal laws that stay the same from medium to medium. In visual imagery, a block is a bold central image that you can instantly understand exactly what it is before you have a chance to think. Okay,
right.
So if you were to think about it from an art standpoint and look about, and I talk about this in the book, an art that pervades our collective consciousness. If you walked up to the average person on the street and you brought up, say, Picasso, and you showed somebody Picasso, they wouldn't know it. But most people, no matter where you go in the world, if you showed them a Warhol, even if they knew nothing about art, they'd recognize a Warhol.
If you show them a soup can, something like that.
Yeah. Or if you showed them a Van Gogh. And what I explain in the book is that Van Gogh and Warhol have a simple image that you can understand before you have a chance to even think. A bedroom, a cafe, a pair of boots, a tree, a sunflower, a field, and it takes up the entirety of the canvas. Or a soup can, a Maryland. These things take up the entire canvas, and you get what it is before you have a chance to think. When you present something that way, we lock on it for a second. You can grab someone in that split second where they lock on, I recognize that, or you can lose them forever. This is how we teach children. It's Sesame Street. It's the count. 1.
Right.
The full page. 2. Right? So what's really interesting is that we use this form of communication with children because it's very effective. But it's very strange that as we get above elementary learning, we stop communicating to each other in elementary ways. And what I've observed, adults in every medium crave this form of communication even more than children do. But as I said, as we get above elementary learning, we make the mistake of not communicating to each other in elementary ways.
It's interesting that you went there because I took note of that in the book. That struck me as an aha moment. You said the true revelation of blocks is that humans of every age really do overwhelmingly prefer to take in information and learn through the same big, bold imagery that we craved as kids. And at that moment, I put the book down and I had to stop and think about that for a second. But it really is true. There's really something to simplicity, right? One thing that's really cool about the book is that it's not just pages and pages of words, but they mix in some really cool imagery. But for instance, when you see this image and you see it even without the word pyramid, I think if you show this to the average person, they're going to know that you're not just referring to a pyramid, you're referring to the pyramids, right? So the idea of these big, bold, simple, either images or sounds or phrases or repeatables, as a marketer and a communicator, that really resonates with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing. I think that people feel really uncomfortable with it. They feel like maybe if they're repetitive with something that's effective, that they're manipulating people. But actually they're not. They're just presenting them with communication the way they prefer to receive it. Mm-hmm. Back to this point of what is a block versus an icon. Once I craft something simple, and in the book I tell you how, no matter what you do, how to craft your block in your medium, whether you're a painter, mm-hmm. whether it's a concept, whether you're writing a resume or proposal. And I've done this for resumes and been very effective, and I've done it for CEOs. So just to really clarify the difference between a block and an icon, because the book is called An Iconist, is once I craft that thing and I plan to repeat it and intersperse it with specific information, because what's important is, and explained in the book, is there's a very important binary relationship between the simplicity that you repeat and the information, the complex information between the repetition. Okay, so it's a block once you craft it and while you're using it. In the 10 minutes it might take me to take any concept and instill it in your head so you can't get out of your head. The minute you take it in your head, it becomes an icon. So a block is just an icon waiting to happen. It's the crafted version. Once it's taken into the consciousness, then it's an icon.
It's very interesting the way you explain it, because I'm actually visualizing the block as being what's living out here, and then the icon is basically what my brain does with it and how it then becomes imprinted on me. What were some of the deliberate elements of this book that not only went into the writing of it for you as an author, but that you think also went into the physical design of it? Because I find it, aside from the content, which is great, I find the book itself a really fascinating study in creating modern content, and I'd love to know what went into that.
That was incredibly planned, strategized, and worked at. And I don't know that a lot of people are going to ask me that question, so I feel really happy that you noticed that, because most people, they kind of take a piece of art, and this book is it's research and it's academic studies and it's history and it's pop culture. But one of the gifts that I'm an art director as well as being a writer, so I had an ability there, and I thought, if I'm going to write this book of why things stand out, it would be an amazing thing to accomplish in the making and in the reading. Deliver what I was arguing you need to do. I spent a tremendous amount of time looking at it as a three-dimensional artifact. And I have research in the book that explains that we retain information better when there's visual imagery. That's why elementary school textbooks all use it. Okay? And then you'll notice as you get to middle school and you get to high school, the imagery slowly starts to go away.
It's just blocks and blocks of words. No pun intended, but just words on top of words.
And it's a mistake, and it doesn't make any sense because the research is in on it. And I want to give credit on the design of the book. The book was designed inside and out by a Portland experiential designer who I think is just a brilliant man named Mark Slotemaker, and he does really complex experiential designs. Like he'll do a 3D office space with texture on the walls and the ceiling. So he's used to kind of doing inside and out architectural design. And so he did every aspect of that book. We worked together on it. It was a collaboration, but a brilliant guy. So I want to credit him.
I think it shows that this book was art directed, and now knowing that it was art directed by its author, I think makes it even more interesting, because every element of it was deliberate to hold your attention. In a way, the book itself is a block. I found as I was reading it and as I was moving my way through it, the book was actually driving me through.
You make a really good point, and it has me thinking about something that I've never talked about in an interview, and I've been doing a lot of interviews lately. And that is, yes, it is simplicity that locks in attention. And the right simplicity that's going to lock that attention, that road sign that's going to make someone go, stop. or
Yeah.
whether it's a concept, or it's visual,
Yeah.
or it's a resume.
Yeah.
That can take a long time. That has to be incredibly crafted. I
Yeah.
mean, just to give you an example,
Yeah.
we probably went back in terms of the physical style of the graphics inside the book on Pinterest for 4 months.
Really?
Yeah, before I really settled on the visual style that I wanted.
Yeah.
And in terms of the cover, I did more iterations of that cover than anything I've ever art directed in my entire life.
Really?
I think we probably ended up doing 70 iterations before I settled on that simplicity. But the work that I like tends to have blocky in terms of like that I would buy repetitive
Yeah.
imagery. So I was in Los Angeles and I was at the Fairfax Market, and I came across an African guy. I think he was from Senegal, and he had these things that almost looked like they were posters that you'd see like splotched up in a wall in Africa, like some sort of advertisement. But he had them done on wood, and they were covered in shellac, and they were just beautiful. And he had 50 of the same imagery. He was doing it on t-shirts. Just a kid's face with joy, and it said "Liberation Beats," and it was just this repetitive. He's like the African Warhol to me. And I was just blown away.
Yeah.
And I walked up to this guy and I said, "How long did it take you to settle on this image? Like, how long did you work at creating that face image with those words that you would repeat over and over?" And I think he told me 4 years before he settled on it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I don't think you have to do that with a brand.
Right.
But I'm trying to say, like, the more time that it's an incredibly deliberate thing that one needs to do. And in just talking to you, maybe I didn't talk about that enough in the book.
Yeah. Well,
how important that is.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, simple is not easy, right? The simpler something is, the more effective it can be. But yet, the simpler it gets to be effective, the harder it is to create. You mentioned a road sign. How much deliberate work went into making a stop sign exactly what it is? The size, the shape, the white border, the color of red. It's probably one of the most complex yet simple things there is, because it's a life-saving device.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And if you think about it, if we look at a stop sign or a yield sign or a road sign, there's a chapter in the book called Road Signs. You would think that somebody put that together in 10 minutes.
Right.
But it's probably hundreds of hours.
Hundreds of hours.
And that's the thing that's really interesting, and that I talk about in the book, is when it comes to life and death, we always use blocks.
Right.
Road signs, warning labels, all follow the same central imagery with negative space around it that you can't deny. So all I'm saying is, if you know it works every time on a bottle of Tylenol, or when you're driving down the street so you don't bash into another car, why not use these same principles to get the recognition you deserve as an artist, as a professional, buy-in from your boss, buy-in from your employees, as a musician. These are the rules that cause us to stop. You can use them like you'd use the color red without changing who you are. It's just a matter of moving your work 3 inches to the left if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I one of the things that people sometimes say is, "You're telling me how to change my work," and I'm not. I'm telling you, this is what the laws of attention are. This is the laws of human perception, how we want to take things in. You can use it or not use it at your whim, but I want people to know, because I come across way too many people in the world, artists and professionals, and I really, really got started on this by doing it with engineers and with science. I've been doing industrial PR for 15 years. And it's engineers having this problem because they make something. It has 25 features.
Yeah.
And if you make something and you spend it and it changes the world and it does 25 things, and you've already got a science brain,
Right.
you're going to want to present all 25 of those things all at once.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, no. You have to find, out of that 25, are there 1 to 3 things that have an emotional hook for your audience? Okay, take that, blow it up, get them to lock, then show them the other 24.
Yeah. There's a great example in the book just about that, which also really caught my attention, and it's something that I say a lot as well, is you can't solve a problem for everyone. You have to solve a problem for that one. Or you can't present something that does everything. You have to present something that does that one thing. So even if it has 25 features and it can do all this amazing stuff, but if you're trying to sell or persuade or influence one person, what's the one thing that you can then turn into a block for that person that's going to influence that person and really imprint on that one person's brain. And one thing that I find interesting to me, and correct me if you think of it differently, but to me, I don't know that a block is always the same block for all people in all instances. So on one hand, you can have this one monolithic thing, like a pyramid, like we talked about earlier, and to everyone in the world, that pyramid is that pyramid. But then there's an example you talk about in the book where you talk about the emotions behind the way people make decisions, and how, especially in our work where we're trying to come up with content and messaging that's empathetic and that will resonate with people, and you say if you listen carefully, the block will often be presented to you. And in that case, everyone's block is then a little bit different. So talk to me about the difference between the singular monolithic block behind, let's say, a brand or a piece of music or a piece of art that will resonate with everyone, versus finding a way to create a block for an individual client or an individual audience and being able to use that to your benefit.
Yeah, well, I think you made a good point in asking the question in the sense that blocks are scalable. They work for a 10,000-year-old pyramid, and they work if I'm trying to get somebody to buy into something in a 10-minute conversation. So let's take a conversational approach. Mm-hmm. You know, people will present you their block. So say I'm a real estate agent and I have a client and they say, I really love modern homes. I get really excited. I just want to find that kind of perfect modern home. Mm-hmm. This is the client talking to you. Mm-hmm. Well, this client has told you what they care about. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you need to do is to listen to them and take responsibility for the fact that if you want to be effective with them, you have to give them what they want, mm-hmm. right? Not try to impose what you want. But in terms of, they've just given you what they care about emotionally. They've just said mm-hmm. they love modern homes. Mm-hmm. So if you just, in your conversation with them, keep repeating the word modern home, I really want to get you in that perfect modern home, they would not look at any other agent. You would be their person.
Right, because you totally get that.
Yeah, but doing that requires some degree of kind of ethical behavior, transparency, right. and authenticity, because right. you've got to be doing it for the right reasons.
Well, and also finesse, because otherwise it just becomes awkward.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be able to, but it also has to, but to your point, it has to come from a genuine place, right? Like, not to be manipulative, but to really convince this customer, this client, that I get you, I care about
I mean,
what
one person
you care
could see
about.
that as manipulative. I think most people would see that as like listening and showing conviction that you're listening. Yeah. But that's the kind of how you could use it in an individual. Another example of just that conversational approach. I mean, I get asked sometimes to talk to sales teams. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, well, I'll go into a company and say they do, $20 million a year and kind of industrial company. Well, who's your top sales guy? Oh, those two guys do 50% of our sales alone, mm-hmm. and the other 12 guys do the other 50%. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let me talk to the two guys.
Yeah.
And typically, I'll ask them, okay, well, how come you're selling more than everybody else? Mm-hmm. I'll interview them individually. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that there's emotional blocks that the customers give them, and both these guys are feeding it back to the customer. And they're hoarding it because maybe they're on commission, they don't want the other sales, right. They want to make all the money, right?
Sure.
So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the fact that the customer will give you, mm-hmm. Another example of the customer giving you the block. Mm-hmm. So even if I go into a business and I'm like, trying to find a way to move something to make the company more visible as a whole. If I do my job well, I was never there. Typically, the thing that's going to make somebody stand out, no matter what they do, the company already has it. It's just buried on page 6.
Right.
So I just take it from page 6 and turn it into a splash page.
Yeah.
And make it oversized like the count.
Yeah.
Right. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
But to give you kind of that would be the small 10-minute conversational example where it could make you a very successful salesperson. Mm-hmm. On a bigger, more macro level, if you were to take something like The Honest Company, which does one thing, mm-hmm. non-toxic products for parents that are concerned about their children in a toxic mm-hmm. society. Mm-hmm. I believe that it is that bold, monolithic concept tapping in to a very succinct emotional concern for mm-hmm. a very broad tribe of people, that increases the speed of your growth, your traction with everything that you do. Mm-hmm. So You can do that. Say you have a company that has 1,000 SKUs and you're selling power tools.
Okay.
Believe me, you have a power tool in there that has that quality. So if you put that power tool up front, the one that has that emotional quality that can go to the broadest number of people, then when they need the more conventional tool because they know you, they'll come back to the other 999.
Instead of splashing the world with
Yeah. If you lead with the busy, you deflect people. Right. Especially, and I wrote that, before. Again, I came up with this idea. We're talking 2007-ish. Okay, so before Facebook was really popular, before Twitter, before Pinterest, WhatsApp, people weren't even texting the way that they are now.
Yeah.
So if it was true when I started beta testing it back in the late 2000s, now it's especially even more powerful now. I would have never predicted. I didn't even know what it meant. As it started to happen and I was beta testing it and I saw Facebook exploding and Twitter exploding, I didn't know what it meant for my work. I didn't think, oh, well, this is going to make it even easier. I more thought, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? Yeah, for blocks. It took me a while. Like those things almost had to kind of become themselves before I'd understood the world I was living in.
Well, and there's another idea in the book that really jumped out at me. You talk in the book about how people will most respond to anything. You reference art, music, design, ideas. They'll most respond to things that they're already looking for. And when I read that, I thought of something that anyone who watches this channel or listens here knows. We talk about cognitive biases all the time. And there's one cognitive bias called confirmation bias. And Daniel Kahneman, behavioral economist, Nobel Prize winning behavioral economist, talks about confirmation bias as it comes when you have an interpretation and you adopt it, and then he says top down you force everything to fit that interpretation. So he simplifies it in this phrase that he says, what you see is all there is. And I found that very much parallel to the idea that you have come up with, where people will most respond to these things where they see a block and it's something that they already relate to. So they look for things to basically confirm the way they already feel and already believe. So how do you feel that blocks and then ultimately icons that get imprinted on people relates to the predispositions that people already bring to the table?
Well, I love that question because we're billions of people all driving down a highway looking for things. Okay? And as we've gotten more choice, we've also gotten more specialized in terms of looking for what we want. So that means that when we're looking for something, we have more choice, we get overwhelmed by choice, it's easier to not be able to get someone's attention. But it also means when somebody's really looking, they're more hyper vigilant than they would have been before there was choice overload, when we did have digital ways of looking. Like, in other words, I want a new shirt. I'm going to go online and look for a shirt. I have to be hyper vigilant. If I'm walking through a mall and there is no digital technology, I can just walk through the mall and kind of look around. So you can take advantage of that hypervigilance in terms of this concept of confirmation bias. So say you've got 7 billion people of Earth all going down a highway looking for different things. Well, if you can understand what people care about, the people that you're trying to reach, businesses, no matter what they do, whether you're a sign company or an engagement consultancy, all businesses exist to solve problems. Even art and design exists to solve problems, right? So if you can tap into your customer and say, what are they trying to solve? And there's an intersect point between what your customer is trying to solve and the best part of you. And there's an intersect point. Typically that intersect point is where your block is. Okay? The best part of you and where that overlaps with what your customer most cares about. If you look at the Honest Company example again, right? There's tons of baby products. There's tons of shampoos. Well, what the Honest Company figured out that a lot of the companies that have been around forever didn't figure out is parents are concerned about toxicity. So I'm driving down my super information highway. I want a shampoo for my 6-month-year-old. I see 20 road signs for baby shampoo. Well, this sign number 18 says, All we care about is toxicity and safety.
Right.
Every parent's going to get off at sign 18 every time.
Right.
Because they tapped into not just what their product does, but that intersect point perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplistic, oversized, repetitive.
Yes.
Right. To me, when I try to distill down what is a block, and you talk about the counts on Sesame Street, 1, 2.
Yeah.
It's that what you've been able to do is distill down this idea of simple, oversized, repeatable as the formula, the framework for imprinting something on someone's brain, but drawing them into it. At the heart of it, that's really what it all comes down to. All right, well, so Jamie, let me ask you, why now? Why is this notion of blocks so much more important today than maybe it was even years ago?
Well, the first third or fourth of the book talks about this concept of dilution. And what dilution means is that if you were walking around in 1950 and you drove to work and you drove home and you just lived your life, you'd probably see about 250 ads a day between looking in the paper back then to billboards. So I think that number is probably up around 10 to 12,000 messages a day. You couldn't process 1,000.
Yeah.
So what does that do to you? Okay, so this is not the first book that talks a lot about just like internet or digital overload. But I take a different angle. And what most people think about when they're thinking about being overwhelmed with information, they're thinking about how it affects them. I'm not so concerned about that. I think that we all know that something's wrong, that we're distracted, that we're trapped by our devices. And that something's always undone because it's ceaseless, and there's 500 new television shows, and there's 400 channels, and there's 8 streaming services. I find myself watching 5 shows at once and then not completing some of the series because I just can't pay it. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it gets worse year after year. What I'm concerned with is, what does that do to the individual trying to reach out? It's almost like a bass note. You can feel that you're not able to get the traction that you were able to get 20 years ago. And it really messes with you, because our work, which is about 1/3 of our lives, actually is far more to us in terms of our self-identity, our self-esteem, our self-worth. When I help a manufacturing company that's a tool and die shop that does 10 million a year, that tool and die shop isn't just that engineer's company. It's his or her mortgage. It's their college, their kids' college, and it's their identity, right? It's so much of how the world sees them, right? So this is a big social stressor, this problem of feeling invisible, and we all feel it. The Gen Z kids feel it more than anyone because they have never known anything else. When I first started this, I thought, oh, that'll be the one group that doesn't get my work. That's the group, when I start talking, that freezes. They have anxiety, and it's reduced our level of joy and engagement with the world. When I was a kid and we went out, didn't have a lot of money. I could buy a CD once every couple of months. I really thought about what CD I was going to buy. So if I bought it, I would engage with it in the deepest way, listen to it 1,000 times, hear every nuance, right? Whereas today through Spotify, and Pandora, I'm streaming thousands of songs a week. I'm not going to engage in things.
It becomes noise.
Yeah, it becomes noise. So everything's like that now.
Yeah.
And that has actual social and mental effects on the individual. So I'm more concerned as, what does mass distraction do to the individual that's trying to get attention? I mean, you're a business owner. You're successful at what you do. How much does that bother you? Feeling like you're not getting enough traction for an offering that you feel is incredibly valuable. Is that something you think a lot about?
Absolutely.
A lot of people think about it all the time, and they're not even aware they're thinking about it. So I call that dilution.
Your motivation is far bigger than just selling books or just helping a handful of clients. It sounds like for you, this has a much deeper rooted meaning for you. Where did that come from? What was the spark? Where did this start for you?
A couple things in terms of motivations. One is I started doing, after some business failures, I started doing industrial PR and communications for a very unique PR firm. And what they would do, and this is where it started to come together for me. I talk about a couple examples of the book that are pop culture examples, but this was the galvanizer, okay? Is they write an article, one base article, and say that you're you make packaging equipment and you only sell to the food and beverage industry. It's the most innovative packaging equipment in the world.
All right.
They'll write one article, and they'll say there's 30 magazines in food and beverage that are the best food and beverage trade magazines in the world. Rather, they take one article and they repeat it, the same article. And they've been doing this for 30 years. And when I saw what that was doing for their customers, the repetitive thing to the targeted audience, that's when the light went off. And I thought, oh, now I'm seeing this up for engineers and scientists, because they do mostly do industrial and high tech. And I've seen this work in music. I've seen this work with architecture and visual design and art. Now I'm seeing this work in business. And I had a moment one day where I saw the connection.
One idea clearly stated, repeated over and over and over.
Oversized, overemphasized, like the stop sign, like a road sign. That's a huge part of it. The physical size of something in relation to the space around it being a little overly sized, in our lizard brain, to the person who's looking in, it communicates a massive amount of conviction. That's a block. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It also drowns out all the other noise, right? When it's big and it takes up all the space, then it's pushing out everything else, and it forces your focus on this one notion.
Yeah, but a really good example of that, just to kind of confirm what you just said, would be, say, like Simon Sinek's excellent book, Start With Why. Say you come up with your why, the purpose or the result you achieve that's going to get people to buy your product. It's not enough to do that, even though that's very effective and very necessary. If you don't say it 12 inches high and monolithic versus 2 inches high, it'll be as if you never said it at all. So what I'm saying that's different is it's not enough to be unique. It's not enough to show your purpose and your why. You have to have that massive road sign, and then it better be transparent, and it better be authentic, and it better not sound like you're advertising.
Well, Jamie, this has been fascinating. Congratulations on the launch of the book and taking this really interesting idea and encapsulating it in a way that I know a lot of people are going to be able to understand it and hopefully start applying it to their work. So thanks so much for giving us some of your time and sharing this with us. We really appreciate it.
I loved being here. I love the questions. I have to say, this is one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done, and I've been doing a lot of them lately.
Oh, well, thank you. That's humbling. I appreciate it. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for watching. For a chance to win a free autographed copy of Jamie's book, all you have to do is give this video a like, subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment down below with one of your top takeaways from our conversation. In about a week, I'll be picking a random winner, and I'll reply to your comment to find out where to send your book. Good luck.